A lot of our customers and a lot of people out there have looked at taking on an SD-WAN type service. And over the last few years, they've now realized as well that a cloud security solution that goes with that SD-WAN service is very beneficial. Applications are in the cloud, people are working from home. It doesn't make sense to have entrenched and entombed security services in data centers or at your offices. Do you agree with that sort of statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen already over time that SD-WAN is now the de facto choice when it comes to corporates from a wide area networking perspective. As you've said, for all those reasons, we've seen security moving into the cloud en masse. And I guess this is where SASE really comes into its own, because it's that perfect blend of SD-WAN for your networking, cloud security, building in those zero trust principles to give a single combined converged architecture for customers.
Absolutely. On the other hand, that's quite a big change for our customers, right? Their architectural change. SD-WAN, in a sense, was an optimization of what networking should have been for the last 20 years, right? We've been waiting for that for all this time. Now we've got those great capabilities. But cloud security is very different from those individual stacks of security that you used to put in different places. And that idea of pushing it out to the cloud, it's a very different architecture, different way of thinking about things. So we have to help our customers, or our customers need to go on a very different journey in changing their architecture and the whole way that their company works in order to accommodate it. So with those sort of risks, therefore, or the difficulty, what do we think about from our discussions with our vendors? What should be the steps that customers take to begin with to go on that journey?
So I think the key thing for any customer is they really need to understand where the starting point is.
Yep.
They also need to think, what is the end goal here? What is the objective? How does this fit in within their wider business strategy? And then working with the right partner, they can come up with a customized, more of a tailored journey on how they get to that end state. Thinking about, what matters most to their particular business, what are the pain points and the challenges they've got, both from a security but also a networking perspective. And I think what we've learned today, as we've talked about SASE, is really the importance of considering both networking and security at the same time.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the conversation is an important thing. So over the last sort of 20 years, I've always seen security being led on as the last thing you think about. Nowadays, with data privacy requirements, security risks, and compliance, it really needs to be built in right from the start when you think about your network, how you're going to access applications, who's accessing what from where, how are your IoT systems working and connecting to things, how are your other servers working. All of that sort of architecture needs to have that security, privacy, compliance, all of that baked in at the same time, right? And that's not easy.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking, when we talk about these trends and moving towards cloud security, especially when we think about the changing nature of threats and security and regulation and compliancy requirements, what's specific about cloud security do you think that's so important for customers?
I think the main thing is that there's a reason why people are now saying that the future of security is in the cloud. And it's not because it's a trend or anything. It's actually because it's very difficult to do effective security on a premise environment or in your data center nowadays. We've got many millions of people missing in the security industry. We've got lots of different complex solutions and services that need to be deployed in order to keep your company safe. And when you put those types of things together, investment cycles and complexity that you've got to do security, really the only way that you can really cover all the threats and compliance requirements that you have nowadays is to outsource that to a cloud security solution and service that does hundreds of thousands of updates every day, that keeps all of the systems running automatically for all of your solutions, rather than having to do those complex projects of reinvestment or changing technologies or trying to deploy things to keep up with the threat landscape.
Absolutely. So it's a much more scalable, much more cost-effective way for our customers to keep up with the emerging threats in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
So Mark, we've heard from our different technology partners that there are more than one model when it comes to adopting SASE. We heard about the single vendor and the multi-vendor. And from a Versa perspective, they very much lean towards and advocate for a single vendor SASE model,
Yes.
whereas Zscaler, we heard that they're very much leaning towards a multi-vendor SASE model. So perhaps for the viewers, just talk us through what we mean by single and multi-vendor, and perhaps give a summary of the relative strengths of each model.
Yeah, thanks, Khalid. So I suppose the first thing to say is that when Gartner coined the term in 2019, SASE, they expected it to be a single vendor, right? They thought it was going to take 5 years or so to get at those security solutions and network solutions put together, which is now a mature market, right? So this is certainly the point where you can properly take a security solution and an integrated network solution. However, some of the pitfalls of that can be that when you do take a single vendor solution, sometimes you have to compromise some of the capability in either the networking or the security. But if you choose your SD-WAN vendor and your cloud security vendor separately, obviously you have choices there where you can make the right choice for your business. So it's all about complexity. Reducing complexity on single vendor solutions is a very good idea. That single pane of glass, the single manageability. A lot of the issues that happen within security are actually control issues of misconfiguration or not understanding what things are being reported, all that type of thing. So when you have a single vendor solution for security, then you're really able to understand everything and control it and manage it properly. On the other hand, when you've got a cloud security company that's been around for 20 years or so, like Zscaler, then they have an ability to execute and a complexity and a depth of service which can meet the most stringent security requirements. There may well be some extra cost associated with that. And there's obviously that extra complexity because you've got to integrate an SD-WAN solution with a cloud security solution, which means it's going to be more costly, more difficult to deliver, all of those types of things. So it's all about balance, right? So how do we help our customers get to that point of understanding that balance and what they should choose?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's about choice and it's about understanding your individual circumstances. There's relative strengths to both models. If you're a smaller organization, perhaps you're looking for simplicity, as you mentioned. Perhaps you've got budget constraints. Then a single vendor SASE solution could be perfect fit for that type of organization, where you get the best balance between networking, optimization and control, and the security controls in the cloud that comes with that architecture. It also means you've got less challenge around interoperability between different solutions, and also in terms of your staff requirements. It's easier to integrate that within your own ecosystem. Conversely, for the larger organizations, perhaps that can adapt to the complexity of having a multi-vendor solution, perhaps they've got more stringent or more bespoke security requirements, as you've mentioned, then for that type of organization, perhaps a multi-vendor SASE solution is a good fit. But I think the key thing here when we're talking to customers is really understanding their unique circumstances.
Right.
It's not just about the size of the corporation or perhaps which sector they might be in. It's about understanding their individual circumstances, their risk appetite, and understanding what their budget considerations might be, the wider organizational challenges, and then working out a strategy for those customers. And it just goes back to what we've said in previous episodes, which is the importance of having the right partner.
I think the key thing is I suppose it's a good one from Zscaler. They say first thing to do is take a breath. Don't dive in, right? Look at what your real requirements are. Take those requirements to your partners and vendors and say, right, this is the outcome that we need at the end of all of this. And we need you to help us, to guide us through this process. The usual way to go through that process properly, obviously, is to take a certain number of proof of concepts or proof of value, as everyone likes to call those things nowadays, and then just look at all of your business requirements and work them through. I mean, we've been working recently with a large financial institution, and they've gone through something like 10 different vendor options, and they've narrowed it down now to the last two. Good to see that they're both ones that we support, by the way, but at the same time, they've knocked these various ones out for specific reasons that don't meet their business requirements, or as they've tested them, the users don't like the experience or it doesn't work properly. That's ideal. If you've got that time, then find the partner, go through those tests, and then come through at the end of that with the right result.
Right. So in summary, what we'd say is that regardless of the adoption, the model that you choose, the partner that you choose, fundamentally, we would definitely advise doing a proof of concept, a pilot, to make sure that not only have you chosen the right technology, the right partner, but it integrates properly within your ecosystem before a wider rollout of the technology throughout your organization.
Absolutely. I think the key outcome is always that this should be silent running for the business. You take one minute, you have cloud security solutions down in the future, and you've got everything delivered in data centers and on-prem. And then the next minute, without you knowing it, suddenly cloud solutions are in place. We did a similar thing ourselves, obviously, recently with Zscaler, where we moved to that service. We did a very fast and successful proof of concept with them. We moved in a couple of months, which was pretty amazing. I mean, there's some interesting things where Ash talks about that on our social media. But that process of how you move quickly through that, but hitting all the right points is really important.
Right. So having a good plan, as always, is really important to avoid failure. And then to test those ideas in a real world environment, but in a controlled environment, is the key to success. And then, of course, ensuring that as you go through that rollout process, you constantly reevaluate how it's meeting those initial objectives and business requirements. And ultimately, I guess, from our own experience, that's how you mitigate some of the risks of adopting and rolling out new technology. Because I think a lot of the conversations I have with customers, it's less about the belief in the technology. It's more about how they control and mitigate some of those key risks when it comes to rolling out a new architecture, a new technology, a new vendor.
Absolutely. Taking that subject of new technologies and new architectures and everything to the next step. The questions we had, obviously, for our vendors were what do we think is coming up? What are the next few years going to mean? What are the changes? So there's a lot of things going on in ICT at the moment and changes in that architecture. Is it going to change the way that our customers do SASE or the way that we approach SASE, do you think?
Well, I think obviously the future, there's lots of unknowns, but I think one of the really strong, encouraging things is that we're seeing that with SASE, we're seeing the emergence of new technologies being incorporated into the technology.
Right.
So both of our vendors talked about the emergence of AI and how machine learning will start to be adopted into the product. And we're seeing the first iterations of that within the roadmap. Of course, we see that trend is only going to continue over time. I mean, from your own perspective, what else do you see in terms of new trends and technologies in the future of SASE?
I suppose the key one probably is AI. No one really knows what the impact is of that at the moment. We could see a very different world in the next few years. So companies are beginning to deploy AI at the moment. So how are they going to do that without risk? There are some types of SASE solutions that can help with tokenization of access to AI systems if you have your own LLMs, for example. There's a move, I think, coming out 5,000 miles from the whole thing. Security at a high level is that CIA triad, right? The confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So telcos have always concentrated on availability out of that part of the security triad. In the last few years, they've moved towards confidentiality being absolutely key for our customers. Nowadays, if you have a breach, it doesn't matter whether your services are available. You've got to stop the breach to begin with. So confidentiality has been key. Now we have an interesting thing with AI coming along where integrity is going to be more important. The truth, the real version of a data that's coming out of an LLM, that type of thing. So again, there's a lot of changes that are happening around that. We're going to be addressing that. We're maybe moving things back from cloud onto premise or onto edge at the moment. LLMs being deployed in those areas, but also people realizing that the costs and complexity of cloud solutions don't work for their business, moving those things back. So it's even more of a hybrid environment that we've got to work with in the future. Do you agree with that sort of thing, or what do you see of the next few years for our customers?
Absolutely, I think you absolutely agree with everything in the security space, and I think also from a networking space, we're seeing a shift, as you say, from availability to the quality of experience, that end user experience.
Right.
So we're seeing the emergence of digital experience monitoring. Customers are no longer just interested in the availability of the service. They want a service that's going to deliver the right outcome for their end user, because ultimately the success of any business is the productivity of its workforce. And that's directly impacted by the end user experience. So it's not just about having a service that's available. It's not just about having a service that's secure, but it's having a secure and available service that delivers the right end user experience. Right then, Mark, to wrap up this episode, I'm sure there's some viewers out there thinking, what are the next steps? They want to go on this journey to SASE. So what would you recommend from a Colt perspective? What would we advise businesses out there who want to take the next step?
Yeah, I think as both of our partners, vendors that we've spoken to throughout this series have said, the key is that relationship with the partners, getting in front of their business, discussing the business outcomes, and seeing which are the right technologies and the right vendors to put in place. What Colt do then, obviously, is we bring in our account executives, we bring in security experts, we bring in networking experts, find out what the business really needs, and then we will bring in the right vendors to take it further, running proof of concepts, proof of values, those types of things, so that you're absolutely certain that the outcome is correct. Building a roadmap then, a time for delivery, and a process to get to that endpoint. I guess that's what we then do with our customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key there is it's really a tailored, customized roadmap that's specific to a customer's individual requirements. No two businesses are identical. No two businesses are starting from exactly the same point, have the same business requirements and the same end outcomes. So we'll take all of that into consideration during those initial workshops to really understand the customer's business, and then we can tailor that journey right through to implementation and then beyond, taking into consideration their own ecosystem and their own unique operating environment.
Perfect.
Thank you once again, Mark, and until the next one.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Khalid.